different than here. Like, no, don't save any material, right? No, we want it all perfect and like new. Yeah.
Yeah, I belong to their group.
Well, it's 6:01. We can call the meeting to order. This is the April 7th scheduled meeting of the Historic Resources Commission of the City of Albany via Zoom. I don't know if we have anyone signed up from the public to make any comment, but if so, I would just remind the public that there will be opportunities to air your position. And we would just ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes in duration in the interest of the rest of the commission. In attendance this evening, we have Commissioner Hacker, Commissioner Garrity, Commissioner Kaplan, Commissioner McEnany, and the chair, John Myers. I declare we have a quorum with 5 people present, so we can proceed with our, I guess we have a public hearing and a public workshop. So,
yep.
Which are we dealing with first, Aaron?
Let's go ahead. We'll skip ahead to Clinton Avenue. Steve and Emily. We'll do the public hearing first because I don't see the applicant for, oh, no. Ahmed is on. Never mind, I take that back. We'll do the public workshop and 123 South Pearl Street first.
Okay.
There's Ahmed. So this application has come in. This is 123 South Pearl Street. Some people may know it as the Golden Chicken Restaurant. They are proposing to replace the existing storefront. The material is not original, but it is the original inset layout. And they are proposing to install a new storefront system that's 20 feet wide that is flush with the front facade. And the new storefront system will be 2 sets of 2 light panels, a set of double doors, and a glass transom. And it'll feature aluminum panels or bulkheads. So when Ahmed did originally submit the application, I did inform him that the recommendation would be to retain the configuration of an inset storefront based on the historic resource overlay guidelines. They have submitted previously for 117 South Pearl, which was also a storefront alteration, and 115 South Pearl Street, which came before the HRC for the renovation of the storefront and putting back a storefront where previously removed. The applicant is on the call tonight, so if anyone does have any questions for them, feel free to ask. But this is the application, and if there is any information that or any recommendations that you have for the applicant or any comments or information that's needed, feel free to discuss.
Erin, can you go back to that overall, because that shows two or one of the previous approved storefronts?
So 117 is the Sans building.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And 115 is cut out. You can just kind of see the plywood, but
how would you compare what we're looking at now, both in terms of existing versus historic configuration, Well, I'll just ask you that. We can talk about materials separate as compared to what we saw on 115 and 117.
117 was also a recessed storefront. That you all approved the removal of the recess to have a flush front storefront. And staff had recommended denial on the application.
When was that?
I want to say maybe 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, thank you, Ahmed. I know Bill was still on the commission at the time, so yeah, probably, yeah, 3 to 4 years ago.
And that was an original, that either the blue form or something else, or that the material was original and,
The storefront may have been replaced, but it still had the footprint was still there, and the storefront at that time still also followed the recess, and you can see where like the footings for the original storefront.
and how about 115?
115, that had been a bar for a number of years, and they were actually putting a storefront back. All of the storefront systems that they've used have been the bronze, aluminum, and bronze aluminum framing system with glazing. And that one I think came to you back in 2018.
Yep.
And that has a flush storefront now.
Correct, and that always had
And it always has.
most likely always had a flush
Yeah.
storefront.
Okay. Thank you.
Is the wood paneled ceiling in that recess area an original feature?
It's wood paneling, but it's not an original feature now.
But it does describe the shape of the inset.
Yes.
The other question I would ask is the air conditioners with a flush storefront. Would there be air conditioners installed in that, or is that going
No,
away?
the air conditioner would be coming out. So right now, the tenant who's a Golden Chicken Store, they would be putting in a new HVAC system. So we're not allowing an AC unit, and nor does the storefront design allow anything to be hanging out.
Right.
The panels are what?
Aluminum with a bronze colored finish on the exterior.
And the 10 feet is the height, the overall height? The 120 inches there?
Yes.
Yes.
And this has all been done by the same vendor, Amazing Glass. So they're local in the Albany area. So they're the ones that did 115 and 117 as well.
We've been kind of course, working with the revised zoning ordinance and all, and paying attention to the and speaking to the documentation that comes to us on projects. And more information, more accurate information is typically what we would be asking for now. So the kind of questions that we're asking with dimensions and materials and profiles and such like that. Have we gotten that before on the other projects, or were they hand sketches? I mean, they were before, and we have a new, a revised ordinance, but what level of drawings did we get before? Do you know?
I will have to go back
I
and
can't,
look.
117, I believe, was a hand sketch because that's the only thing that we did to the exterior. 115, Keith Kramer is the one who did the facade for us because that building was vacant and we did a full gut renovation.
Yes.
So that one had a little bit more detail. So he had like the computer CAD drawing, but 117 is similar to this project in that we're only touching the facade.
And the transom lights would be clear glass as well as the side lights and the doors?
I'm sorry, I don't follow.
The the glazing that you're using, is it all intended to be clear glass?
Yes,
Okay, and the, above that horizontal bar, above the doors, is assumed to also be a transparent transom?
yes.
Okay.
I feel as if we need a dimension drawing. I don't know if the doors you're showing are 6'8" or 7'0". I don't know the height of the panels. I don't know the height of those transoms. I'm a little worried that when we see the width of the framing, that the pair of storefront glazing on both sides of the double doors will be real tall and skinny, rather than, I think, an expression that would typically be a larger piece of glass historically. So that, I don't think the amount of information here that we've got is adequate.
I agree. This confuses me. I'm not, it's not third dimensional. I'm not sure what I'm looking at. And it's certainly not a before and after of what it is now and what it will look like after. This is more the price of materials. But I have no idea what it will look like when it's done.
No, I think a scaled line drawing, and then it could be superimposed on the photograph, if it's properly scaled, would certainly offer a better image of what we're looking at, and it gives you an opportunity to adjust the proportions of the transom as well, if it looks like it needs it.
We have no early photographs of what that building looked like.
No, unfortunately, there's no blue forms for these properties. For most of the Mansion Historic District, there's no blue forms.
Yeah.
There is a historic photo taken from, Madison and Pearl, but you can't, the angle of the photo, you can kind of just see the face of the building, but you can't see the storefront.
Could we take a look at the building again instead of this?
Yep.
So where the two air conditioners are, that would be replaced with glass?
Yes,
Okay. And the solid material would be left solid? The white,
yeah, that would essentially be the aluminum,
yeah,
the new aluminum that's part of the storefront.
okay. The
Right.
solid would be solid, but the lower
Right,
the
exactly,
internal ones would be glass, 4 panels.
exactly.
I'm sorry,
Jack,
say that again?
So, Jack, where the double doors are and the
Mhm.
glass on either side where the air conditioning units are would be
Mhm.
coming all the way out to the sidewalk. And so it would be glazing where the open sign is and where the other fixed
Where would
window is by the door.
would
would
the
be coming-
doors be brought forward also?
Everything would be brought forward,
Everything would be flush.
correct?
And it would extend basically the length of the canopy
Yes,
over or the awning that says fried chicken on it.
What do you mean extend it further out?
No, it would be flush with the wall above, the main
Oh, okay.
building.
So
But-
where the side door is going up to the apartments,
The
That-
length of it would extend the full width of that canopy.
right, would you bump your head when you went in there?
No, that's,
But that's one reason you'd move it out, so that you wouldn't. No, I guess you'd keep it right where it is. No? You're telling me you wouldn't hit your head on it.
no, I mean, the sign is, I want to say maybe 10 or 11 feet up, so nobody would hit it.
Okay. It's about where it is now?
Yeah,
Okay, would it cover the dark wooden border that's above it? Because right now we can see the canopy, and we can also see the wood behind it. Would all of that wood molding continue?
well, once that becomes a part of the inner storefront, it would be either they would continue with drop ceiling, or they would do essentially an exposed ceiling. I think that would be more on the tenant itself, because if you look on the inside, it's sort of, I believe it's drop ceiling right now. So I mean, they could either keep it the way it is
Yeah.
or put drop ceiling there.
Well, I'm wondering for the front of it, what will the front of the building look like? Would
You
the,
see, if we look at the right picture and we look at the upper right corner, so you see how that's directly underneath the awning. So once we come up to flush, right, we're right underneath the sign. So I mean, if you're at the storefront and you look directly up, you're going to be underneath the awning.
would the height of the awning, the top
Yeah.
of the awning, be in the same place as we're being shown now?
Yes, we're not touching the sign.
Okay, okay.
It looks to me that in either photograph, there's a chance that that molding, there's the low brick wall right on the right side of the photo. And
That's not a
just,
brick wall, sorry. That's just, it's like a panel. I just
okay,
want to
okay.
clarify that.
But to the left of that, there's it looks like there's some framing that's got some profile to it. Right,
In the corner.
yeah, right there. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. So that, if that's kind of part of the early storefront, and then I don't know what's behind that white painted plywood, I guess. So I suspect there's kind of early stuff here. It looks to me that the ceiling has some age to it with all of that. I mean, I'd like to take a look at it, but with all of that molding and the profile, that sure looks to me like it's been there quite a while.
Yeah, I just want to preface this, right? The Golden Fried Chicken store has been a tenant for over 40 years.
Yeah,
So, I mean, a lot of the things, I mean, if they've done anything, might have been cosmetic over the years. That's why, you know, everything has just kind of been like piecemeal, like this panel. I mean, it's just taking away from the character of the building. We're hoping, our vision was to kind of put it in line with South Pearl Street, where we've updated all the storefronts. This would kind of take away from the canopy. You know, this has been historically a rough part of South Pearl Street. By us bringing up the storefront, it'll take away from the drug activity that's going on. People are taking shelter under this canopy, you know, when it's the weather conditions. So by doing this, I think it'll just keep the traffic moving. It won't have a lot of people standing out in front of the store, which is what we want, and what's happened with 115 and 117 over the past couple of years.
I think I remember that presentation of that discussion.
Yeah. I mean, we're trying our best, you know, to, you know, work with the community members. You know, we've been in this community for over 25 years now, and we're trying to kind of clean it up. And I think this is kind of like after we finished 115, we wanted to focus our attention to this because one, the exterior or the storefront hasn't received any TLC over, I want to say 30, 40 years. I mean, you have the AC units that are hanging out. We're also working with the tenant for them to do an updated like cosmetic decor on the inside.
That'll be a major project on the interior then, wouldn't it? Because then I could barely make out what's inside there now, but
I mean,
Green is
we don't
raw
have specifics on
space.
that because it would be more up to the tenant, but I'm talking, you know, they need to update some machinery. They probably need a fresh coat of paint, you know, just to kind of liven up the place.
I take it this is a healthy business that's been there for all this time.
Yeah, I mean, McDonald's across the street closed. I mean, if you look at the restaurants downtown, there's not really anything 125 South Pearl over. So
Mhm. And you'd keep the ceiling the way it is in this picture?
yeah, I mean, if there's no reason to, we haven't found any issues with it, I don't see why not.
Yeah. The molding in where the corner is, right next to the sign that says Bolden Special, et cetera.
Yep.
That's wooden molding, or am I looking at a metal?
No,
Pipe.
it's wooden molding. I mean, they're all the solid pieces are some form of plywood that's been refinished or painted over.
Not a pole?
No.
Okay.
Well, from my perspective, I'm pleased and I hear clearly what you're trying to do and it's
Yeah.
great. I'd like to see some better drawings of the
Okay.
storefront
Okay.
with the dimensions of, say, the mullions and the height of the panel, et cetera, shown.
Okay. Fair enough.
One thought on the height of the panels is I still have a suspicion that what we see in the left photograph.
Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, I have a suspicion that, I'm not sure, I haven't, I'm not up close, but that white painted plywood may be part of the original, may be covering the original lower panel. So
Okay.
that'd be good to check. And if so, that would be a good height to follow for the new storefront.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, I think as you take it apart, whatever cues are given from what's there now, would help inform. I would
I mean,
think,
you guys made a fair point. I think Amazing Glass, they should have at least signified how much what the height of the glass or what the height of the panel is. But we did talk about verbally with them that the height would be what the existing would be. But what I can do is have them maybe do an updated drawing to kind of signify what's the aluminum, what's the glass, and what the upper panel be.
yeah.
Also the width.
In the width.
The width of all those elements.
Okay. Yep. Just making some notes here.
And I will provide you with a write-up, Ahmed.
There's an incline there too, isn't there? Stepping into, going up, almost handicap ramp type scenario.
It's like very minimal. Like we've talked with Amazing Glass, it's not going to obstruct anything or cause any issues. It's not like a typical ramp that you would think like at an angle. It's very
It's gentle.
yeah, it's like very gentle. That's a nice way to put it.
Just enough to shed water.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Will the new proposed entry accommodate wheelchairs and handicap access? Because that
Yes.
might come up.
Yeah, there's going to be no steps or anything.
Well, I think this offers a level of consistency with what's been done in that block. We hate to see the recessed entries disappear, but certainly understand some of the issues associated with it. And glad to see the air conditioners will be going away. This is here for our comment this evening. So, unless we have any other comments, Aaron, do you have enough information to guide the applicant?
Yes. So I will write them up and get them. Ahmed, I will get them back to you.
Okay.
We will then have the public meeting or hearing for this on April 21st.
Okay.
And we'll take action then.
Okay,
If you did need more time to get documents from Amazing Glass, we could push it to the first meeting in May if need be.
okay, perfect. So
but-
I'll wait for your comments and then I'll reach out to them.
Would
Yep.
you quickly show one more shot of full streetscape? Just something I wanted to write.
There you go.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Oops.
Okay.
What did I do there?
Let me just.
Were there any other comments to offer the applicant at this point?
I think I just see one comment in the chat box from Joanne Morton.
Yeah. She
Yeah.
said, Joanne Morton has written in, if recess entry presents a security issue, by all means, get rid of them. What is APD's input? And
I'm assuming
do
that's
not-
Albany Police Department or,
yes, Albany Police Department. And I do not know what their thoughts are on
Yeah.
recessed.
well,
Let me just check. It doesn't look like. So, but I will write up the minutes for this for you, and email them to you, Ahmed, and then we can go from there. So
Okay. Thank you, Aaron.
you're welcome. Jack,
Did
did
you
you
make-
have,
Should
No,
I stay on
it's fine.
or am I okay to drop?
you're okay to leave. Yep,
Okay, thank you guys.
Very
you're
good.
welcome.
Thank
Okay,
you.
have a good night.
All right, so now,
Next item on the agenda is 452 Clinton Avenue, Salvation Army, returning with the information they've provided on the economic hardship of, replacement of the non-original windows with full-size windows, fully filling the original masonry openings.
so I believe, so, just a little, I believe you all have been present at the workshop and the public hearing on March 17th. On March 17th, the HRC denied the application based on the window guidelines under the rehabilitation standards of the historic resource overlay guidelines. Emily submitted new information requesting the historic property hardship modification based on the financial details to install the windows as proposed, the 1/1 aluminum sash windows with new EFIS panels versus installing a replica industrial style window that fills the whole entire opening. So that is what they are here today to present for the financial hardship. And Emily or Steve, I'll let you take it from there. Steve, you are either muted or your mic is off.
And can you hear me yet?
Yes.
Yep.
That's better. Okay. So yeah, we we did research on what it would take to install what we think would have been the original, close to being the original windows. We called Hope's Windows down in Jamestown, who makes industrial steel windows, replica windows, but they're to modern standards, thermally broken with insulated glass and so on, but true divided lights. They make significant historic windows for many, many buildings, probably in Albany, but certainly in New York City and Washington, D.C. and so on. And so they're very noteworthy. And we showed them our drawings. We kind of talked about full openings with true divided lights. And they said the frames themselves, because they're fully welded and originally made, would be about $250 a square foot, but that's not installed or glazed. And that doesn't include the demolition of the existing. So they said to use a number around $500 a square foot, which is a pretty significant number. And the worksheet that we presented shows you how those numbers pan out to close to a $4 million project by the time we're done with not only the windows, but you know, the HVAC work, the ceiling work, and so on. And we think that's probably a pretty appropriate number for that level of commitment. And Salvation Army, when we showed them that and discussed it with them, said, you know, that's far exceeds anything close to what they have available to do this project. So that is the essence of the hardship, is that isn't something that they can afford or are willing to commit to at this point. And we did recently get some bids in for the design, as you've seen on paper, and that is also slightly larger than their original budget. It came in closer to $600,000, even for the project we were envisioning, as you had on paper, and we had projected, I think it's $300 and something thousand for that. So even that is more money than that they were originally committed to spending, but they're committed to the project and they'd like to move forward with it. So that's in essence our hardship, and we're happy to discuss any or all of that.
Well, certainly owing to the work that they do and their willingness to stay in downtown Albany and improve the building's appearance, as well as its thermal efficiency, and the fact that the installation of the infill panel and the smaller windows is essentially reversible. You're not impacting the original masonry openings. You're repointing at the window jambs and doing stabilization work there. So, you know, I think certainly the hardship is relatively clear or clear cut.
I have a question. What we're seeing is this was your budget for the project that you presented to us at 380, right? 492.
Mm-hmm.
That was your
Yes.
budget. And what
Yes.
you just said is it came in closer to 6.
Correct.
Where are the Hope windows that where's the cost?
It's on the hardship application that we submitted.
It's
Okay.
currently up on the screen, Marilyn.
Okay.
It's the 3 million.
$400 a square foot
Mhm.
cost for the Hope's windows. Which
Are you
Hope's windows,
talking,
I know that's not out of range by any means.
you were talking about the front windows now, the ones visible from the street, and it wraps around the corner a little bit? Not every window in the building.
No, I believe this shows every window in the building.
It does.
So,
Oh,
yeah, because the original application speaks to every window in the building, the hardship modification also addresses every window in the building.
I
Because
wonder-
that would be the true application of how the ordinance is written.
Yeah.
Right. So this 3 million, so we have the 380 or 600, whatever you're going to call that. And then we have this additional cost. But in fact, we had spent quite a bit of time talking about an acceptable solution that would be some of the windows and not all of the windows, right? I think we called it the head house.
Yep.
Right?
Right.
So I would think that another piece of information to support the hardship application would be taking these numbers and taking that $3 million increase and only applying it to the percentage of the overall project.
The only issue there, Marilyn, is that their original application was speaking to applying the same condition to every single window opening. It was a request for, I think Emily originally said like 300 plus windows.
Right, so my understanding from the conversations we had was that although it would be ideal to do the head house, because all of the facades are visible from a public way, that the remaining facades would still not meet your requirements.
Right.
And when we went over this with the Salvation Army, you know, even doing the front portion is an increase in cost that they're very unhappy with.
Yeah. But also, because the whole application was denied, their initial proposal for all the windows was denied, and there were no conditions placed on it. You know, they weren't applying to put specific windows in the head house. It was the same window throughout. They have to provide a financial hardship that speaks to that original application as it was denied. And in the hardship modification, they do speak to the recommendation on John's revision to the application with the elongated windows. And they, based on discussions with Salvation Army, they did decide not to proceed with that recommendation either, based on the cost difference in the windows.
You know, additionally, there is walls that bisect those window openings and ceilings that come down in that space, and reworking those spaces was not something that the Salvation Army wanted to pursue with, you know, relocating walls and ceilings.
Well, I think that you've provided the information that we asked. I think that whether another layer of extracting just the head house windows, I don't believe that it would change, at least my opinion of accepting the hardship as represented here. I guess that John's recommendation for the different proportions of height and width, that's practically just a here nor there, right? Because we denied the project for a hardship. So I think you've set out what we asked. And the numbers are big, but even if you presented them a little less big, it's still a huge difference from what the minimum costs at 380 or 600 are.
No, I think and we, you know, we're fairly clear about the detail, the level of detail of the hardship, that it, you know, square foot costs and, you know, unit costs were certainly adequate to demonstrate this. And I think clearly this does demonstrate it. One could argue you could buy a less costly window than a Hope's window, but still it's a massive undertaking and a much larger project. You know, I'd certainly like to see the windows elongated in the front, but I understand the issues with the spaces as they're existing and as they are currently configured is a limiting factor. So I think, given that we've accept the hardship, then what is our next option? Is to approve the project with any other conditions that we want to set upon it? I know there was discussion about the color of the framing and the ephes panels, and some discussion of making them much closer in color.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if the commission approves the hardship, then the project is approved. And I would make a recommendation for, I mean, it sounds like the Salvation Army is open to changing the colors, but make a recommendation for the altered color.
Yeah.
We
Maybe
did
that-
note in our application letter that, trying to meet you at least partway, they are willing to modify the colors, and
Yeah.
we will make the ephes darker color to blend with the window frames.
And
That has no, I mean, that's not really a halfway. That's like, has no cost impact, right?
Right, but
A
There-
little way, we would like to make the building as appealing as possible, within the cost constraints that we have.
the one thing you can say, it is reversible.
yes,
Where it is now, it's reversible. Where it would be after this, also reversible.
within the hardship modification guidelines, it does speak to, does this impact, the character of the overall character of the district? I would definitely say no.
Mhm.
You're replacing in kind, and it doesn't prohibit the Salvation Army, if they do have the funds in the future, or if this building is sold to another property owner, it is reversible. They could always install an appropriate replica window down the road. We're not losing any historic material, and everything can be undone.
Well, given that set of circumstances, I would entertain a motion.
I would move that we accept the hardship, and with the one caveat that we'd like to see a color that would be more compatible with what was described, and that color could be checked with Aaron, and if it's everything we were talking about, then I would move that be accepted. The hardship would be accepted.
I'll second that.
Okay. Is there any comment, Aaron, from the public? Anyone want to offer?
I didn't have anybody signed up, but let me double check. Kara, did you have any comment? Let me see, I don't know. It doesn't look like. I don't believe we have anybody. There's no comments, John.
I don't see anything in the chat, so.
No.
All right, I'll call the, we have a motion on the floor and it's been seconded. I'll call it to a vote. Let's see, I'll do a roll call. Commissioner McEnany,
Aye.
Commissioner Kaplan,
Aye.
Commissioner Garrity,
Aye.
oh, okay.
Sorry, I was muted.
Gotta find that mute button. Commissioner Hacker.
Aye.
All right, and I'll vote aye, so it is carried 5-0, so the motion passes.
All right,
Um,
thank you. Thank you very much.
If you find a little golden pot of money someplace, come back and talk to us. Those windows in the front.
We'd love to.
And Steve and Emily, when you get the specifications for the EFIS panels and the color, I would just ask that you send them to me and we'll review it to make sure that it meets the condition.
Okay, great.
Thank
Happy
you.
to do it.
Perfect.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Okay, well, good luck with the project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Back up.
And Aaron, I see one more item on the agenda under new business,
Yes.
33 Alexander Street.
I have this on the last agenda. We didn't discuss it, but so 33 Alexander, it came in front of the commission back in May of 2020. The land bank brought it forward for demolition. It's a 2-story wood frame structure in the south end. I wanted to bring it back to your attention because the land bank will most likely be coming back shortly. And the commission had placed a number of conditions on the deferment of this application in May. 2 of which, the 2 were that the HRC was going to reach out to other New York State land banks to find out how they market their buildings that are within historic districts, and then also work with the land bank to try to market and explore options for this building in order to save it, whether it was finding a buyer or someone to do rehab on it and stabilize the structure. Since May of 2020, they did have the property re-inspected, and when the property was re-inspected, it was officially condemned. They cannot allow anybody into the property. And so it sounds like they haven't had anyone reach out to look at the property, but any type of real estate showings, it all has to be through the virtual tour that they had put together, and no one can go into the structure. This property, I believe, also the front wall was starting to deflect, and they had to retie the front wall into shore and tied in back into the building, and it's pulling away from the front wall is pulling away. But I don't know if anyone would like to volunteer to reach out to any contacts they have with any New York State land banks. Or if there's.
Can you go back to that list, Aaron?
Yep.
So it looks like I made a motion, but now I'm gonna like speak to the motion. Why would we take on the investigation of how land banks market their buildings? Like, in a way, it kind of makes me think of the new ordinance and the emergency demos and Richard Conti and Rick LaJoy. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff to do around that. But if we're looking at one particular project here, I would think that it's the merits of this project that we should be looking at rather than this more global question.
I think I know that I'd have to go back and I'd have to rewatch all the video again of the meeting. they had submitted information, I had pretty much put all the packet information for May 2020 into tonight's packet.
Yeah,
What?
I believe that they had no interest in the building and had no showings. And I believe that Commissioner Tobin, and I believe you as well, Marilyn, had brought
Yeah.
up that the Albany County Land Bank may not be marketing
Right.
historic district structures as well as other New York State land banks. And one or both of you had offered to reach out to other land banks to
I
see how they
think
were marketing.
I don't mean to push it off, but I think Erin, it's to me, it seems more likely that Erin thought that she would do that because she knows all
Yeah.
the land banks. She
Right.
knows all the folks
Right.
there.
Yeah,
But it's interesting because those 4 bullets, well, the 3 bullets, the 3 top bullets are really important. And is anyone from the land bank on the phone?
I don't believe so.
Or on okay. I mean, those are things that we would expect the land bank to be doing if they were serious about saving existing buildings and historic buildings, right?
And I think that they are currently, I know I've talked to Will Sekula, who is the planner at the land bank, and Amanda had followed up. I believe that they have been trying to work on the conditions of the deferred 90-day deferment on this.
You mean on the
Deferral.
last bullet?
I think on providing the data, I think they're working on the data, and I think that they're also, I mean, it asks them to look at their weatherization practices. And he did tell me that they haven't been able to show the property, and in person at least. So I don't know if that means that they've had people actively look at the property or what, but
I'd like to know if the building was in such condition that it can be mothballed and maintained for a point. As you know, the price of real estate has been going up in a lot of places. Is this about to collapse on a building next door? Is there extraordinary liability to the land bank? Is it just easier to make it go away? Are there other buildings they've been working on that are near it and it drags down their mission in that area of South End Groesbeckville? What is the building doing right now that it needs to be demolished, which is an expensive thing in its own right? And if it were mothballed for a later period of time, a year, 2, who knows what, where it would be sound enough that at a later date it could be rescued. Is this an emergency? I don't see the city calling an emergency. Is it properly boarded up now? I don't think so. I just saw the pictures on the interior. I'd like to know how much is this building a liability to the neighborhood and to the land bank? And if it were properly boarded up, which would cost a lot less money than demolishing it, and preserve a potential for the building at a later date, I don't know. And I wonder if we could get those answers from the land bank. If they come back and say just boarding it is going to cost us so many thousands and thousands of dollars, and it drags us down, and the neighbors are losing their mind over it, and we have an engineering report that something serious is going to happen where it's going to collapse and be an endangerment for people nearby or the buildings nearby. I don't know what the story is on the building. I see what it looks like from the inside. It's a mess. How much is cosmetic and how much is structural? I don't know the exact.
And the question that I'd add to that, Jack, is what was the condition of the building when they took it over?
Yes.
I mean, presumably there's some sort of an inspection, and is the current condition under their watch?
I
Right.
see a message from John Martin saying that he has pictures he can show us. I mean, it's, I see a lot of new wood in there, which,
So, Jack, I remember the one you all had brought up, is this a real threat? The condition of the building a real threat to the neighborhood at the time, and that, can it be weatherized in order to potentially find, market it and find a new property owner? I know that Amanda Wyckoff had brought up that they have concerns because they have pretty much tied the front wall into the main structure, because that front wall is starting to pull away from the rest of the building. But again, these pictures are probably a year old. So I don't know what the current,
I
but
don't think
they
it's
do come
ever
from-
been cleaned out. From what I see on the picture on my left here, it's never been cleaned out.
But that would be if they do come back, I would, part of their application would be having updated information. So updated photos on the condition of the building, an updated engineer's report.
Would Rick LaJoy have that if the building had just been condemned? Would there be any kind of new information? Do we have to rely on the land bank for that information? Why was it condemned?
I could reach out to Amanda and see and ask. Yeah.
Who condemned it?
We say condemned. There's
Yeah, what does that
two
mean?
levels. One is not fit to live in, condemned, and the other is structurally unsafe. And I'm looking in the right-hand side here, and I see the slant on that partition. If it's only a partition, it's not the end of the world, but if it's structural in some way, that's a serious issue.
Well, apparently it was serious enough back when they did this first inspection that they had installed the bracing to stabilize that front wall, but it would be good to know what they've done in the meantime, because part of the charge to them was to try and market this, which, a clean out would have gone a long way toward making this a little more attractive prospect.
That was water entry from their skylight that we just saw in the attic there. Yeah, this, if they shored that front wall and spent resources shoring that front wall, one would only do it if you believe that the building had potential at that point, right? Otherwise you'd say the front wall is going, there's nothing we can do. Let's call it for demo.
Yeah.
So that they did that stabilization work, it's reasonable to assume that the building was salvageable. Yeah, I think a timeline for this project should be presented, and I'd like them to come and talk to us about it, because it's a recurring problem, and I don't think we're very happy every time we see these. They're not communicating with us.
I wonder what the streetscape looks like. I see what the front of the building is. Do we have a picture of any of the buildings next to it, or whether there's a vacant lot next to it, or like the building on the left I see, is this a true vacant lot next to it, or just an alley on the right-hand side?
I can find out, Jack.
The building to the left looks like it's occupied.
And look at it, it's a good building. It's one of the more decorative, intact in terms of the materials, the buildings in the South End. It's not covered with aluminum and.
Yeah, I mean, it's got what appears to be original siding, original detail. I mean,
and
it's
the building,
little building.
excuse me, and the building 2 doors up looks like it's restored. I just saw the picture there.
Would it be possible kind of outside of this 33, but can we have at one of our workshops a presentation from the land bank with some of those bigger questions, the list of properties, and ask them, maybe also ask Rick to come, Rick LaJoy to come, because he's certainly on the fringe of all of these discussions.
Yes.
I do think the question you, and well, now I'm seeing more of the more of the streetscape, and look at the new construction.
Yep.
Lots of new construction. It's occupied, and building next to it is not occupied, but it looks sound, reasonably so. And then this one's the tag along on the end of the row, and apparently a vacant lot after that, and then another brick building that matches
Also
the wooden building.
Also vacant.
Yeah. And who owns that one? The one-
And who owns the vacant lot?
Yeah. And I'd like to see in context how much of a loser it is and how much of a danger it is, as opposed to could it become an asset once again? In fact, if you look on your left of this picture, it's quite the vacant lot that somebody's turned into a garden, both inside and out. There's a lot of positive things going on that block, and a lot of potential positive things. Did Habitat do the rows just above these ones? I think they're Habitat, aren't they?
They're either Habitat or they're Albany Housing.
Hmm,
Right.
But these might be Habitat.
they are. I think I remember when they went up. Habitat used to have a horrible reputation of building things as practical as possible. So if you had a beautiful building that faced the street and there were 3 windows across the top and one was a bathroom, you put the small bathroom there, which put everything out of whack. There was no symmetry to it and no architectural value. And when this started, they started to put things in a way that they were comfortable in the neighborhood that they were going into. But I can remember some of them when they were just built from the inside out, not looking at the outside when you were done. They've improved quite a bit now. This is an example of an improvement. The one's on the left there.
So our job is to protect the historic buildings protect historic buildings. And probably others have seen some of that proposed increases in the tax credits. You see that go by to 30% and changes of adjusted basis and some other tools to make the tax credits more usable for smaller projects. So that's maybe kind of part of the infrastructure bill. I got it from the National Trust and all. But my point is, those are more opportunities to invest in these buildings. And the land bank, they just have a different perspective. But our job is to save these buildings as best possible. And I don't know, I'm just venting, whining or something.
I think you can also look at it in its context. What's going on the entire street, what's going on the entire row. And sometimes we'll get the opposite of a missing tooth, where you'll have something, the last thing standing, it's just out of place. Whereas this is still blends in with the neighborhood that it's in, and with some improvement would enhance everything. It's in the right context to give it a good second look before you just demolish it.
Back to one of the questions I think that you asked, Jack, is are we seeing some of these proposed demos from the land bank because they have bigger plans for those sites? Erin, have you gotten anything? Do you know how their that whole developer for the cluster, did that go through? Do they have their developers identified and lined up?
I know that it is in the works. I believe they have somebody, possibly have someone identified to do the work. I think they're still working through possibly like the RFP process for the south end. And then I
It was
believe
a
that
long
they,
time ago, though. It was like a year ago, wasn't it? When they, or 6, 8 months or?
it's been a while.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they did more than one round or what their
Right,
RFP process.
right.
No.
After a year of COVID, I wouldn't be overly criticized for anybody missing a deadline
Right.
anywhere.
I also know that they are in the process of also doing another, I think, like scattered site development for the Arbor Hill area as well. But I think that hopefully shortly we will see something come forward for the south end. So I know it's in the works. We do have a number of people from the public. I don't know, do you all have any other comments, or if you're open for taking public comment now? If that's okay.
Now we can go ahead and take public comment.
Joanne, Joanne, you
Hi.
have 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Joanne Morton, and I'm a resident in the South End, also president of South End Neighborhood Association. And, you know, last year when we talked about 33, I had concerns about it not coming down at that time. I still am of the opinion that it probably should be taken down because, you know, the Land Bank has reviewed it. You know, they've given their recommendations. You know, the building, you know, structurally, I'm sure has not improved. The building was boarded. They've actually had someone come out and disconnect all the sewer or gas. You know, those steps were moved. They dug the building next to it. You know, unfortunately, the pictures don't paint the real picture. I wish you guys would take a minute just to come down the street and you will see that the building that's 37, 35, which is adjacent to 33, that building has gaping holes. You know, we have skunks and raccoons living in the
Who owns
buildings.
that?
The
Who owns
33,
that?
when it was lived in, yes, it was a beautiful structure. And unfortunately, you know, that owner left and we've just watched the building deteriorate. You know, we have 1, 2, 3 buildings that are sitting adjacent with the X's. I know, you know, and across the street we have another 2. So, you know, yes, you know, we have some nicer homes on the street that were built by Habitat. You know, we do have other homes where people are, you know, maintaining their homes, but it's when you see a building, you know, like this and the one next to it sitting year after year after year after year, you know, and when people come to visit your home, they look, you know, first of all, they see the X's and then, you know, you wonder about the safety and the structure of the building itself. You know, the same issue will come up with 35. I mean, when you walk between that building, you know, there's materials falling off of it. There are holes that are big enough for me as an adult to enter. It's a concern. It's a concern not just, you know, as a resident and a homeowner on the street, but also as a representative for the neighborhood association. I realize there are, you know, a lot of things happening in terms of, you know, you talk about clusters, but the Alexander Street property is not part of any cluster development that I'm aware of that the land bank is doing at this time. You know, their focus primarily has been on the Second Ave, Elizabeth Street corridor. You know, I think that, you know, if money was available for them to do, or for, you know, someone to invest in these historic properties, it would be wonderful. But, you know, you're looking at a building that's probably been sitting vacant for 10 or 15 years at a minimum. So, you know, I do have some concerns, you know. Yes, I would love to see it preserved, but at the same time, you know, how long? You know, you know, how much longer should we wait to see if, you know, the funds are going to come in, or if someone is going to invest? As you know, this district, the South End area was redlined for years, so that, you know, people didn't invest, you know, so the tides are turning. But if you're talking about taking $150,000, $160,000 just to renovate that building, you know, where are those investors? I don't see people investing down here. You see, you know, you have people investing, you know, Clinton Avenue, yes, and they're using those tax credits, but they're getting big blocks of buildings that they're working on. So, you know, I still stand to say that, you know, unless you have somebody or know something that's imminent about fixing the building, you know, my personal feeling is it needs to go, because, you know, we live here every day. It's not, you know, I live someplace else and I'm, you know, I live here. I know what I see. I know how it makes me feel when, you know, people visit and it's like, what is this, right? And it's nothing that we as homeowners or residents that live in this area can do, except, you know, hope that someone will invest, hope that, you know, you guys will make the right decision and allow the land bank to
She muted herself.
I don't know. No, they're all very good points. And
Where did she go?
I remember Joanne speaking the last time before us.
yeah,
I'm not sure why. I can't. Jack, I know that when she was speaking to 35 Alexander, that is privately owned. Or yes,
Well,
35 Alexander Street is a privately owned building.
I think, to be honest with you, I think the city ought to come down there, clean out every backyard, every alley of those 3 buildings on that side, one of which is belongs to the land bank. And we ought to get a plan to what to do for all 3 of them. And, you know, that's a city obligation to do that. You should certainly not have holes in buildings that children or derelicts can go into. That by law has to be changed. And to say that that's been let go for months or even years, that's illegal. Whoever that owner is responsible for it. And if it's gone to the county's responsible. If it's gone to the land bank, it's responsible for them. If someone has a hardship, sometimes we can help with that hardship.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna our next one. Ariel, I don't know. Would you like to speak? See, that's unmute. Give it a second. All right. Second. Go on. Kara. Are you there, Kara? Is hold on.
Somebody from the Morton family sent.
Aaron, can you hear me?
Oh, Kara, yes, there you are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, finally. Sorry, technical difficulties all evening. I just have a couple, hopefully very brief points that I wanted to make. One is that this was a building that was a part of the first restoration fair that we did, and we weren't able to get people into it because there was a small localized weakness in the floor in the rear of the building. But we specifically asked for this building to be a part of the fair because it had the most details still left within the building. And some of the work that had been done, there was obviously a little bit of investment in it, but it hadn't compromised anything. This building, though, has deteriorated to the point, though, where it needed more than just a little bit of TLC. And it's one of the buildings that we feel is a perfect example for where if more money was actually put into it at the land bank level in the right direction, I know they did some stabilization work on it, which is kind of tying the facade on now. But part of the problem, and this had been briefly brought up at the last meeting, was that not all of the stabilization work actually, one, fixes the problem that's causing the issue. It's stopping immediate catastrophic failure from happening, but it's not stopping what's causing the catastrophic failure from happening, if you get where I'm going with that. There was a roof leak in the gutter, which was causing a lot of this damage even before the land bank got it. But instead of repairing that, they just tied the facade on, which again was needed, but you have to also stop it from getting worse. So I think this is one where we need to also work with the land bank and try and get them to move their buildings forward. Yes, if they're going to put stabilization money into it, it needs to fix the problem, but it also needs to help advance actual rehabilitation of the building. A lot of the work that was done to tie it back would have to be removed and an actual more permanent plan researched, put together, and executed for the building to continue to be, or to actually be used. So I think that's another angle that's a problem with this building, is that you'd have to undo some of the stabilization work that was done to actually make it inhabitable, which made it a heavier lift instead of an easier lift. So that's something that Historic Albany has been trying to push the land bank on a little bit. And we would love to have further conversations about how to actually get good money into these buildings, because they do have some stabilization money, because we would like to see some of these that need extra help used. Other land banks are using the tax credits, which is really the biggest incentive out there for doing any kind of development, especially if like the neighboring buildings can be acquired and put together as a package. That's a great tax credit project for someone. And that's something that they can market and whatnot, but they can do the tax credit application too. It's not something that has to fall through the developer if the land bank can use them.
Does
so
the
some
Albany
support
County
is
area,
great.
do they use the tax credits now in Albany's example?
No, they don't. Syracuse is the only land bank I know that has been successful, and they have done at least one, if not multiple, scattered site tax credit programs focusing on stabilization work. Some of them did include, at least one of them did include a full out rehab, like 2 Judson could have been an example for that. But my understanding is the tax credits were not used in that building. But if the land bank could use that, that's a 40% credit. That's huge.
Yeah.
So that would be big. The other point that I do want to make, and this is not advocating for the building's demolition in any capacity whatsoever, but I do have to make it, unfortunately. We're constantly vilifying the land bank because their buildings are being demolished by an emergency. This is one where they were proactively trying to follow the right channels so that it didn't become an emergency demolition. And while we obviously don't want to see this building come down, we would like to see some kind of procedure developed for how do we all work together to determine, okay, yes, this building actually does need to come down before it becomes an emergency, and that it's not a reactive thing that's not only losing historic fabric, but harming the neighborhood. We're losing any fabric that could have been salvaged, and emergency demolitions do not create safe environments for neighborhoods with lead paint and sometimes asbestos-filled, dust-filling neighborhoods. They're just not great. So we would love to see a little bit more, I don't want to say a streamlined process for demolition, because demolition should not be streamlined, but a good process put in place so that if a building does actually need to come down, it does not become an emergency. Because I'd really hate to see any details that were left in this building thrown in the landfill, because it ended up being an emergency when they applied last year. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
All right, I think that's all my comments. Thank you so much for the opportunity to comment. We greatly appreciate it. And we very much appreciate all of the discussion that's happened around this building, because it really is a great building and the South End really deserves everyone's attention. So thank you for having this discussion.
Kara,
Well, thank you, Karen.
all right, let me go back. Okay. Ariel, if you could unmute yourself, you have the floor.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi. Wonderful. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ariel Morton, and I'm the resident at 37 Alexander Street, which is the last brick house that you saw in the row of Habitat homes when you were looking at the Google map. So at this juncture, I guess I'm kind of disheartened by the conversation that's transpiring this evening about the building at 33 Alexander Street. Last year, May 2020, when the land bank initially came to you all about wanting to do demolition, my neighbors and I were all elated about that information, because it's like, okay, finally we're being heard. One of the houses of several on this block that are contributing to the blight in our community, on our street, I'll say, is going to be dealt with. And then you all made the recommendation to give it 30 days. And here we are almost exactly a year later, but that's neither here nor there. I'll blame that on COVID. So I guess this evening, to hear that we're back in the same place again, where we're going to continue this conversation about preserving a building that to the naked eye, it's evident that it most likely cannot be preserved, is absurd to me. It is unfair for myself and for my fellow homeowners on my street to have to come home and park in front of that building. I'm just going to focus on that one. To park in front of that building when it's unsafe, like it's bowing out in the front. You see raccoons, skunks, and other animals running in and out of the side yard to, get into the building. The rear of the building, when you're walking around Delaware Street, is full of garbage, and there are people that squat back there when the weather is nicer, like it is today. And that's not fair. So for me as a homeowner, why do I want to continue to invest my money here in the South End when I can go live elsewhere where I'm not going to be surrounded by buildings with red X's that people are going to stand in the way of wanting to demolish when there isn't anyone that wants to invest in them, but someone's going to stand in the way of wanting to demolish these buildings because they're saying, oh, it's a pre-Civil War home, it's historic. However, if the building truly meant that much to those parties being mentioned, then I feel that when the trolleys go on tours through the historic communities within the city of Albany, the trolley would come down Alexander Street and stop at that house. However, I've never seen the trolley come down this street. So I think that there comes a time where we have to be realistic. And I understand wanting to preserve history, completely get that. I'm not opposed to that. But in regards to this particular building, something needs to be done. So either funds need to be funneled into this building expeditiously so that it can be rehabbed and lived in by someone, or it needs to be demolished because it's definitely taking down. It's an eyesore. Like, I'm getting emotional talking about it because it's definitely a thorn in my side. Like, just thinking about the right now, I'm parked in front of that building, and to have to walk past it, I'm sorry, I can't do this any longer, but just please be considerate when making these recommendations. Take the time to come down to view these properties before you make these decisions. Find out why those that own the properties want to have them demolished, because that is a building that's definitely bringing down our neighborhood. And I can definitely say it's bringing down our property values. And I know that because a recent conversation with my insurance company. So please take those type things into consideration. And I'm definitely in favor of this building being demolished. And if I have to have a petition signed by all the residents on this block to state that they're also in favor of that, I will do that also. Thank you for your time.
Well,
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Certainly take it to heart. Aaron, does anyone else care to speak?
I believe that is it. That was,
This was put on the agenda for us to kind of renew or revisit the discussion.
right.
Been put off
Because
for any particular decision at this point.
no, because the land bank had reached out to me to tell me that they will most likely be coming back with this application in the near future. I wanted to have the chance to discuss with you all the conditions of the 90-day deferral from last year.
Okay.
And just a follow-up.
Well, it's certainly fresh in our minds now, and at the forefront of what we've looked at and heard from the neighbors. And we certainly feel for the neighborhood as well. Yeah, I certainly intend to drive down there and take a look, but I don't know if there was any, I mean, we wait for the land bank, or do we have a discussion with the land bank about this property?
We can definitely invite them to have a discussion, or if we wanted to have something offline with a couple of the commissioners, we could always set something up. I can also reach out to them to ask Amanda and Will if they have the updated engineer's report for when the property was condemned. And also if there's just any new information. I will reach out to Erin Tobin and see if she has had any conversations or has any information about the condition on the application that speaks to marketing of properties.
Okay.
Actually, the first bullet point of how other New York State land banks market their properties. But I can definitely see if we can maybe set something up with the land bank and just go over the property a little bit more in depth with them. So
presumably, if it was condemned, that was an official action by the Department of Buildings, so they should have a report or some sort of documentation on their observations.
Yeah, if I can't get something from the land bank tonight, most likely I would guess something would probably be on file within the building department.
Okay.
I have two comments. One is that I hope we get a timeline of when they took ownership and the work that they did and kind of the scheduling on that, just because we're trying to assess the stewardship over that period. And the other is the comments from the neighbors that we've heard are, you know, I hear them so clearly, and but I feel as if we're taking the brunt for the failure of the land bank. That was their job, to take care of these buildings. And they're not part of these conversations. Well, until we have this next one that Aaron, you're going to set up. So we didn't create this problem. And if there's going to be resolution, I think we really need to get all of us working together to understand, I don't know what, to better understand each other's goals or whatever that might be. But why do we keep seeing this? Their job was to take the buildings, assess them, see what ones they can get ready and to protect them. And so each time we get these, it's their failure, in my opinion.
Do they have any options that they can turn down accepting a piece of property given to them? Or do they?
I believe that they can, from what discussions with, with, representatives from the county, from the land bank and Sam Wells. And after we finish up this, I'm gonna bring up another property. My understanding is that they do have the option to turn down properties based on their condition. If they look at a property and they feel that that property is only going to be demolished based on the condition, then they have the ability to say, no, we will not take ownership of it.
I saw Mr. John Morton's name was on there.
Joanne has said the buildings are in disrepair when the land bank receives them. They are a problem when the county turns them over, and the problem remains regardless of who owns the building.
That's reality as South End residents. It needs big change, and there has to be a real big prime mover.
Right.
What's going to get developers in there or are interested even? I really feel sympathetic for the neighbors, but I do understand that just tearing down more buildings isn't ultimately going to change a whole lot. But leave you with a vacant lot. I'm sorry to giggle here, but I know it's a serious. And if the land bank, we have to go beyond the land bank.
I think so. I think the problem has to have all of us at the table to discuss it. We're just kind of working in the abstract here. We don't talk to them about this. We don't know the city's priorities. We don't know how the building department, where these projects are relative to what they know of them. We're just in the dark, and it's a complicated problem, and we can't solve it alone. But you know, you heard me say I think we're taking the brunt of it, and
I'd agree with that.
yeah. So maybe, Aaron, back to what I said a while ago, was maybe we can set up a dedicated time to meet with the land bank and with Rick LaJoy.
Yep, that'd be a great idea.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Does anyone know what the mayor thinks of all this? The ongoing demos and the concerns of the neighbors? Do we know?
I'm not sure.
Okay. We know that it was that the protection of the buildings is a concern of the council, common council, right? I mean, we got that whole new provision, whatever it is, bill ordinance, about the emergency demos.
Right.
So they're saying, we get that there's a problem here, let's do something. So maybe how do we figure out where the leadership is on this?
Well, and this is an opportunity to meet with the building department and with the owner, the land bank, to have that discussion on how a property does devolve into something that becomes an emergency, which this will rapidly happen if there isn't a solution developed for it. So, Aaron, if you can take steps to set that up, I think it would be and it, kind of plays into the obligation we have to report to the city and to the mayor on the issue with vacant buildings and emergency actions.
Right.
This certainly is an incipient emergency action in the making.
Right.
And not alone.
No.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah, I'll start that process of setting something up with both the land bank and Rick.
Great, thank you.
You're
Okay.
welcome. And the one other, does anyone else have any comments about this property, 33 Alexander? Yeah. Okay. Just one other thing. We saw 540, I had to put this on record, 540 Clinton Avenue had come forward as an emergency demolition at the last meeting, I believe. Or
Yeah.
March, right. 540, it was emergency demolition. I made the statement that the land bank owned the property. I was incorrect. The property is actually privately owned. There are this is a property that was in such bad condition. There are so many liens on the property that the land bank could in fact own it, but because of the condition has left the ownership under the private individual. So it is not county owned, it is privately owned.
Say that again, how it was left. I say that one more time.
The property is so many liens on it. They
Yeah.
haven't, they're back taxes.
Yep.
The county has the ability to take ownership, had the ability to take ownership of 540 Clinton Avenue. But because of the condition of the building, that it was just going to lead to a demolition, they did not take ownership of it.
Okay.
It's still privately owned, but they are paying for the demolition and placing that, I believe, as then placing it
right.
back on the property as a lien. But I need to go on record. I was incorrect about ownership. So.
Well, that's interesting then, because we kind of at least understand the process with the land bank, as we just had a conversation of who knows who's assessing the buildings, et cetera, for the county, and that's a whole different process. Yeah.
Right.
We have our hands filled with the land bank right now.
Now, if the property is left with a lien on it, it's a vacant lot, I mean, who might be interested in that vacant lot?
Maybe the neighbor. The neighbor might want it. The land bank does have a process where you can buy side yards. So pretty much if you are a neighboring property owner to a vacant lot that the land bank owns, as long as you agree to maintain the lot, I think a couple of summers ago they were selling lots for like $100.
For $100, right?
To own.
So yeah, pretty much. But like you can go through and I mean, if you have a property in the South End, it's a row house and you don't have really any yardage, you can buy one of these neighboring properties, and the first people that they go to are the people that own the adjacent properties. And then, there's no interest there. They open it up to other individuals. But
And presumably any lien or demolition cost associated with that property is discharged, and it's not
Right.
the burden of the new property owner.
right. So, I mean, our hope is always, and I know it's difficult, but like where we do lose, have missing teeth and rows of, row house style structures, that somebody will come back and put a new structure on those lots. It's difficult though. But
Boy, it feels like in terms of all the demos that have occurred, the missing tooth is like just an abstract problem to us. Like that's not our I mean,
yeah,
I understand what you're saying, but we have loss of streetscapes
mhm,
and district integrity and stuff.
right. Yeah.
Okay.
So what's our emergency demo report for the last month or couple of weeks? Do we have one?
I work with Marilyn and John. We submitted a letter to the Common Council. We're going to be sending a mid-year report in August.
One time only.
One time only.
Right.
Yeah, this is it, one time only. A one-time only mid-year report that'll look at the 2 quarterly reports that we get in April and July. And then
From the building
will-
department.
From the building department, correct. So the building department will be sending us April 15th coming up, and then July 15th reports on the number of emergency actions in historic districts, the locations, it'll be mapped. And then the information about the property, what has taken place, I think costs, and all the reports. And then August 6th, we'll submit our mid-year report. And then April 1st of 2022, we will submit a full report for the year 2021.
And I would hope we would include the historic register and eligible eventually. I know right now, is it legally a district or isn't it a district? And, eventually, if it's eligible, we should include them all and not wait and go, oops, forgot about that one.
Mhm.
I remember that you, Aaron, spoke of not that you'd be getting reports on the local districts, right? But what did the language in it's not an ordinance, it's a bit, what is it? I forgot.
It's an amendment to the ordinance and then
Okay.
also a local law.
Yeah. So what did it say relative to what Jack just asked?
It says city historic districts.
On
So I believe because it's an amendment to the historic resource ordinance, that applies to our local historic districts.
So how do we add how do we get information then on those to be defined eligible districts?
We just expand the map that we use.
Yeah.
I mean, the reports, I mean, I think Marilyn, you had pointed this out. The reports that we will be getting from the building department are supposed to map citywide.
Right.
Okay.
So we will be seeing things citywide. I also get notified of all emergency actions taking place in the city.
Citywide.
So
Aaron, do you have in your own, either drawn or written down or in your head, rough boundaries for what's been discussed as eligible districts?
for a national register or local?
Both. I mean, we're trying to cast a wide net. We're trying to protect buildings all we can. So if it fits, all.
Most of our local districts are also national register districts. So we have the only district or most of our districts are certified. So
My question's about the eligible. How do
the
we
eligible
start to?
districts, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about the Helderberg neighborhood as possibly being eligible. Pine Hills, which includes all the kind of other Pine Hill, like what we all like kind of roll into the Pine Hills area. Pine Hills.
Don't you have a Delaware?
Possibly the Washington Avenue corridor is being locally designated. It's currently a National Register designation. Delaware Avenue. Talked about potentially doing Second Avenue. So yeah, like there's,
Can you sketch those out on a map so that
They're all mapped in the
They're all mapped.
preservation plan.
It's in the
Yeah.
plan.
all of those, all the, boy, I forgot about that. Okay.
yeah,
So
I
that's
mean-
really the boundaries we want to be
looking at.
responding
We
to.
may have to fine tune the boundaries, but the
Right,
general
understood.
area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Um,
forgot about that. All right. Good.
Yeah,
Okay.
a lot. Beverwick, like
Right.
Well, they pretty much through the.
pretty much
net.
everywhere. I
Iowa
mean,
City.
yeah,
So in a week, we should be getting the first report.
yes. By, we should have a report by, before
Yeah.
the April 21st meeting, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So we'll start looking at that.
And did I send, let me just check real quick. Sorry, before there was one demolition after 540. What's going on? Apologize. I will send it out if I didn't. Did I? 196 2nd Street. I don't know if I sent the notice to you all.
I think so.
I will send that out. We don't have the,
We don't have the engineer's report. It
I
was
haven't
just
received the engineer's report
a
yet,
notice
so,
of emergency action and the designation of the demolition contractor for it.
right. But, March 30th, 196 2nd Street in the Pembroke Triangle District was taken down. But, when I have-
196?
196, yep, 196.
That's not in the Tenbrook district.
It falls in the boundaries of the historic district.
So that's Arbor Hill.
Right.
Okay.
What about the adjacent buildings? Did they state?
I believe they were stabilized. They didn't touch them.
Well, it'd be interesting to see if they did any work on those. All right.
Yeah. So once I have that information, because 196 is a center building, so.
Yeah.
But when I have that information, I will send it out.
Great. Okay.
So. It's not 196. So. That is it on my end.
All right, is there anything else to? come
Yeah,
before-
I'd like to comment, if anybody saw the Times Union with the picture of the restored building of what used to be Bulgaro's Tavern years ago. And it's a beautiful, beautiful restoration, particularly the storefront, the colors. And there's a very narrow end on it because it's triangular. And it's got a very fascinating mural on it. And I don't know unless somebody's gone and put gaudy colors on it between now and then. There's also, I don't have any objection to that at all. It's for the bee, and the bull and bee is the name of it. It's fascinating. And it's on the alley of Van Zandt Street.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They've done a beautiful job on it, and I want to add my disapproval of the one that's you see when you come down Broadway, and there's another gaudy cartoon monstrosity on the side of a building that's 150 years old. It's the row of buildings that are on Broadway, and they are historic fronts that are just beautiful. And then on the side, there's a gaudy cartoon that's enormous, which is a bright gold or You know, when I look at what we do, and particularly in Troy and places like that, it's really embarrassing. The one that's on Phillip and Van Zant, however, is very acceptable. I mean, we're the same people are telling you what kind of framing to put on the Salvation Army. And we want to write that down because we don't want something that's gaudy or it's going to stick out or detract from the architecture. And then at the same time, we're authorizing a 150-year-old building to have something that is certainly the opposite of anything in it or its neighborhood.
It's not a local district, so we did not review it. Put that out there.
Well, you know, it's coming up again on North Pearl Street because there's a blank wall there. And I hope we'll be more sensitive when we allow that to go.
You know, Jack, it might be interesting after our land bank, after we make friends with the land bank and have great progress forward, it could be interesting to have a conversation with Tony Adaccio from the Center Galleries just before we have a specific project in front of us. Because
Well, we did, and we approved it.
no, I know that, but the concerns that you raised, right?
Maybe we ought to show them some examples in our own area, starting with Troy, where the murals are wonderful examples of artistic talent, and they're compatible with the building and the neighborhood that they're put into and not imposed on.
So wouldn't he want, I mean, I can only imagine that he would want to have some input of the sensitivities of the commission before he's lining up other artists and other murals, right? Then he's gonna
Yes, the last artist came from, I think, Poughkeepsie in some place.
Yeah.
They weren't local.
All right.
Okay, well,
I'd like to put forth a motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Yeah. Second.
nice initiative. There we go.
All right.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Good night,
Okay,
all.
bye
Good
all.
night.
Good
Good night.
conversations. Bye-bye.
Yeah.